Is the labor market completely cooked in 2026? That's the question that we're answering tonight.
Honestly, that's the question that people have been asking for the better part of 2025. As we kind of wrap it up, it has been a just roller coaster with employment, job numbers, all the other stuff. I mean, it's been pretty crazy. And, I think the best examples that I can see kind of came from you this year with your HVAC business and kind of how you experienced the ups and downs of kind of making that thing run better.
We've had fluctuations in our employment, and we've had to make some hard decisions, some not so hard decisions, bringing new people on, letting some people go. And I think more than anything, it's just, you got to be careful about like how you structure an employment agreement and like what the expectations are in 2026. It's not an easy market. Inflation is very high. People expect a lot, and as a small business just trying to make it by on something, you've got to really pan out what you can afford with your margins and what you can hand off and try to make it work.
Certainly, I think that there's a fine line between paying someone for the comparable to their work and what you want them to have versus just paying somebody because you feel like you should. And I think to that point, one thing that we've learned across speaking to many people and experiencing this in ourselves, no amount of money is going to make somebody stay if your culture sucks. And I say that in the hiring episode because how many times has somebody been hired into, or have you been hired or worked somewhere and the salary was good? It was, good pay, good. You're like, damn, this is, I'm chilling. And then you start to work there and you're like, man, these people are awful. The job is good. The people are terrible. And you've considered taking less money for a lesser environment. Like it is a big problem.
It's definitely something to think about on both sides. And I think one of the big points that we wanted to hit on in this video is you've got to be careful about, you should really just be very thoughtful about either getting into an employment arrangement or bringing on an employee. Like no matter what side of this conversation you're on, you should just put a lot of thought into it and be very considerate, very careful. Even if you're going for a position, going for a job and you get offered it, like look at it carefully, make sure that it's something that makes sense for you.
Certainly, I think it's very important that, like they always say, you should be both sides of the table, be asking the questions and really trying to understand how the dynamics work. One thing that we've talked about in an episode of Deal Flow was, we talked about, if we had to hire a CEO with, the amount of money, how would we go about that? And most people will say, oh, well, there's no good talent, even though there's tons of people looking for jobs. And Brody, you gave a very succinct and, perhaps even a very experienced answer, given your past in recruiting, about how you would go about finding a good candidate. And I feel like that formula could work for any sort of role.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before about hiring a position for something. And I think for anything like executive, C-suite level or anything, like if I was going to try to find the perfect candidate for something, like realistically, I wouldn't just put out a couple feelers, talk to a couple people in my immediate network and hope that the right referral comes through the door. I also wouldn't just put out an ad on LinkedIn or Indeed for a week and hope that a couple people just came into my door and plopped right into my lap or came on a silver platter. I would be very intentional about it. And when we hire serious positions for clients or something in the advisory work that we do, this is the same thing that we do. We cast a wide net, but then we get very whittled down to the right candidate. So just for a sales position that I hired recently, I spoke to about 50 people before I ended up landing on the right candidate. Spoke to about 50 people, whittled that down to probably 10 good candidates, and then probably about 5 great candidates, maybe 3 to 5 great candidates. And then we picked one from that list of candidates.
Granted, you probably had a lot more than 50 people apply, and you had to then go through that.
Well, I spoke to that's a huge part of it because we were spending money on Indeed with our client's account to be able to find all these candidates. So I wanted to make the most of that spend that we were doing. So actually I spoke to most of the people that applied. It was probably 60 that applied, but I mean, anytime that someone applies on Indeed for something that I'm trying to stay on top of, they get an automated message, but I also send them an actual text message and say, hey, I saw that you applied for this. This is my number. I want to talk. When can you talk? And I try to get that message out ideally ideally you want it to go out almost immediately. If you can have some kind of notification that comes through every time you get a new applicant, you hop on it, send it a copy and paste message that you had, at least just to get in front of them, and find a time to talk and try to set up like a 15-minute slot to talk to them on the phone. That's what you got to do immediately. Like you should have it out in seconds if you can, if not minutes. But people will wait days and then be like, hey, you still interested in this? Maybe, but maybe they found another position because they've been looking. And so I think you just have to be really quick, really on top of it, very, very diligent. And you also got to sell it. You've really got to like think about what someone in that position would see value in, not just from the money side of it, but the ability to make more money. If it's some kind of sales position or there's some kind of performance base to it, you got to really convey like how they would do that, what kind of support they would have, what it would look like, what the culture looks like, what the goals are with the company. You've really got to sell it too.
It's just, I think back on it and I just I can't help but remember that speaking to my mom, who is a business owner in the dog and pet industry, she always has, it's always to her, the hardest part is staffing and making sure she has enough people to cover, enough people on payroll, enough people on staff, and just, how people will just kind of come and go. And she always says that it's just a condition of the industry. And
it's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. I mean, it's just simply, and for her, it's a lot of on the job training. She, these people come in and not all of them have degrees. Most of them are just kind of like passionate people about pets. And they're just, it takes about a month of training to get them on processes, documentation, how to handle all that stuff. And then, somebody like that, says, oh, I can make $2 more doing this job. And they just kind of leave. You've wasted time and energy on them. And it is simply the industry, though, because you can only pay so much to somebody who does a certain job. And, there are ways to make plenty more money. But if you don't have an interest in that side of the business, then you can't really, you can't really expect it. So it's definitely kind of it's not a revolving door, but there's always a chance that the person who trains just won't work out or will, leave for a different gig. So I think thankfully in the industries that we're talking about, everybody pretty much has a skill or comes in with a certification of sorts that gives them a bit more of a command in what they can do, but also in what they can make. So, they're more likely to stick around if you can give them the opportunity to make money, because the money they will make for you is worth paying them more. Plumber goes out, fixes a pipe. You charge an X amount of dollars. He gets basically a percentage of that is his hourly. So more money, more ability to pay people. So whatever industry you're in or looking to get into, consider what the average education of the person in that job is and what that means for a return. I think there was
well, on that point, because I think this is a really good
there's a quick little one of those Hormozy ones where he was like, he quantified down. No, actually, I think you did this. I think you're the one who figured it out. You were like, an average HVAC guy can do like $500,000 a year in business revenue for the business, and say you pay them
if they're completely capped out.
Yeah, if they're completely capped out, and you're like, but if you give them like I think you said if they I don't remember the analogy, but you were able to like calculate the average cap out of like certain technicians and levels, and you were using that as a bonus for hiring. If somebody brought in somebody. Incentive. So if you kind of reverse engineer that, you can actually figure out what percentage of that total revenue you're able to pay somebody if they're capped out.
It's true. If you have something with very high value employees that produce the revenue and you're confident you can keep them booked out, then it might be worthwhile to drop some actual major money as like kind of a bonus, like a headhunting fee internally to your staff. Now I've changed my opinion on that a little bit, because I do think that, I think that's one route to do it. I also think, and you've got to look at your like opportunity cost and the time spent on this. I've also just had such great success spinning up a good Indeed campaign and just having candidates come in and interview them, and just whittling through down to the right ones. I think it's just about having a really, really sharp eye for the right talent and asking the right questions. And that's one of the things that you wanted to hit on in this conversation too, is asking the right questions. And I think this goes for both sides, whether you're hiring someone or you're interviewing for a position. Like, there are very particular questions that we ask in these interviews. One that comes to mind, because you were talking about having these like skilled employees that want to have a full career in something. The way that I suss that out in an interview is I just ask them, like I said, so tell me a little bit about, like, what are some of your long-term goals? Like, what made you attracted to this position, and what do you see as some of the long-term goals that you have for being in it? And the answer that I'm looking for, at least in our industry, is I want to hear them say, yeah, actually one day I want to start my own business. That's like a lot of these HVAC guys that we hire that just got a certification or maybe got one a couple of years ago. That's the ones that have been the best historically for us, or the ones that come in and they say, maybe they have some experience, maybe not, maybe just a little bit, but they say, I want to start my own business in this one day. And I think this could be a great stepping stone. And specifically the ones that don't think they're going to start their own business in a couple of years. Because I always ask what the timeline is for that too. I say, well, that's awesome. Like, how long do you think it'll take you to figure that out? And I don't want to hear like, oh, I think I just want to come do this for a year and then do it. Because if they do that, great, but you're only going to have them for a year. I want someone who is on like a 5 or 10 year plan to go and start their own business eventually.
And realistically, if you're looking to start a business and you're getting into the trades, probably going to take that much time to really, if you're going to be serious, learn everything about the business that you're in to then start your own, which not a bad thing, especially in our opinions. We like that. And we would, you love to say you'll send somebody off with their flowers if they want to go do that, if they're honest with you. And honestly, you're a guy who has, you encourage it. And frankly, you're willing to help out the people who are like, hey, if they have questions and they say, hey, I'm starting this business, can you help me? There's enough air HVAC units and ducts to cleans that it's not like it's going to be taking over everything that you're doing.
They could become a great subcontractor. I think you should keep that relationship strong. Yeah.
It's truly a mark of a good employer when they can help their employees start their own businesses, because it means that they were such a good educator and supporter of that person felt comfortable they could do it themselves. And I think that's kind of the type of, to kind of round this back to what we were talking about, the type of person you want to hire is the type that wants to maybe start their own business, but knows they don't know what they don't know about it. Because that person's going to be very engaged in the process. They're going to want to learn. And at the same time, maybe they get into it and they're like, I don't want to do this. I just want to work here because it's a good place to be. And they're just being a great manager at some point.
Yeah. To put the other hat on, I mean, the other flip side of that coin, maybe if you're thinking on the employer side of this, maybe you just get them with really great golden handcuffs along the way and find a suitable situation that they like and they're happy about, and that you're happy and you feel good about, and just have them in it for the long haul. Maybe they even get to the point where they're taking like a very high up position in the company because they're so engaged, and you find a way for them to vest into some equity. A great way for people to buy businesses nowadays is to work in the business for 5-10 years and then eventually get to the point where they are in a position to make an offer on the business.
Yeah, if you can really expand and grow internally, I mean, that's normally the best route to do it, especially if you're the owner. I will put an asterisk there because we have seen a couple situations and scenarios play out where sometimes the person that's been with the business, especially if you're acquiring one, sometimes that person that seems like they've been here long, they understand, I'll just bump them on up to this role. Not always the best thing to do in some situations, and you got to really kind of be careful, because you can really create a lot more work for yourself than you will solve problems. And I think that's actually, we could do an episode about that in and of itself, kind of figuring out when somebody's ready and when they're definitely not.
It's a great point. And I mean, I think that's a lot of people's first instinct is to promote someone internally for a bigger position. But I think a lot of times I've found that sometimes you could just find a better candidate externally, someone who's very uniquely situated to the need at hand.
Yeah, and I mean, in the best case scenario, it ends up with a mentorship. You end up having kind of a mentorship type situation, or sometimes people just are where they are and they can't grow beyond that, and that's okay. Not everybody is built for that sort of, continuous climb.
It's true. So, as kind of a recap to this, talked about asking the right questions, whether you're on the employer side or the employee side of the interview table. Ask the right questions and make sure that you nail it there. We've also talked about on either side that you're on, you should do a lot of volume when you're looking to make a change. If you're looking to hire someone or you're looking to get into a new position, you should take a lot of interviews either way to make sure that the fit is right and that you can compare it to other things. And we've also talked about progression in these types of things and what kind of people to look for and how you might want to think through these things. But tell us in the comments whether you think the labor market is completely cooked. Maybe everything that we said in this video is just completely invalid. Maybe we're totally wrong and there's no way to win in 2026 as an employee or employer.
Maybe everything's bad and we should all just go home. I don't know. Tell us what you think. But sometimes we have a habit of putting out this stuff and then everything changes and we have to go and be like, oh, damn, didn't see that coming.
Everything changes all the time. That's just the nature of it.
Truth.
But tune in for the next one, Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Find myself or Ryan on LinkedIn. Shoot us a message if you have any topics you'd like to see talked about on the show. And we will see you on the next episode next Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in.
See you.